स्टूडेंट कैसे हो आप सब। स्वागत है आपका आपके अपने यूट्यूब चैनल स्टडी विद आंसू में। सो स्टूडेंट्स, इस वाली वीडियो में हम बात करने वाले हैं आई फिजियोलॉजी के बारे में। ओके, सो आई फिजियोलॉजी में हम आज बेसिक्स पढ़ेंगे। आइज़ के बारे में, आई फिजियोलॉजी के बेसिक्स और स्ट्रक्चर के बारे में पढ़ेंगे। सो अगर बेसिक्स की बात करें, सो in eyes we all know about that vision is crucial for human. Okay, and you will be surprised after knowing this fact that more than half of the sensory receptors are located in the eyes. Okay, so more than half of the sensory receptors are located in the eyes. Okay, because eye is the one of the sensory organ that are directly comes in contact with the environment, external environment. Okay, so that's why more than half of the sensory receptors are located in the eyes. Okay, and all these nerves goes from these eyes from the retina goes to the cerebral cortex part of our brain, where uh, visual processing are happened. Okay, so cerebral cortex is dedicated to processing visual uh, information. Okay, so we can add that visual processing. So visual processing कहाँ होती है? Cerebral cortex वाले part में. Okay, now if we talk about electromagnetic radiation. Okay, so what is electromagnetic radiation? Okay, so it's referred to energy in the form of waves. Okay, that radiates from the sun and other source. Okay, and from suns we all aware about like UV rays. Okay, and other source like X-ray machines radiates X-rays. Okay, and like microwave ovens radiates microwaves. Okay, so all these waves are electromagnetic radiation. Okay, so I have a sequence of rays in an increasing order of their wavelength, and that uh, all are these sequence and or these electromagnetic rays are combinedly known as electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so this entire range of electromagnetic radiation is called the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, in this we can see it contain a different wavelength. Okay, from very short wavelength of gamma rays. Okay, and to very long wavelength of radio waves. Okay, at gamma rays its wavelength are even smaller than a nanometer. Okay, and if you talk about radio waves, its wavelength are even greater than a meter. Okay, so gamma ray, then X-ray, then UV ray, and then visual light. Okay, then infrareds. So UV rays and infrared, इसके बीच में यहाँ पे है वो विजुअल लाइट है वो फॉल करती है. ओके, विजुअल लाइट फॉल्स बिटवीन यूवी एंड इंफ्रारेड्स. ओके, एंड दैट वी कैन विजुअलाइज. ओके, तो यही सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट यहाँ पे विजुअल लाइट्स, ये विजुअल रे है, विजुअल लाइट सबसे ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है, जो कि 400 नैनोमीटर टू 700 नैनोमीटर की वेवलेंथ की होती है. विजुअल लाइट्स में भी अलग अलग अपने विबज्योर पढ़ा है. वी ऑल अवेयर अबाउट विबज्योर. ओके, दैट स्टैंड फॉर वायलेट, इंडिगो, ब्लू, ग्रीन, येलो, orange and red. Okay, so red colors wavelength are 700 nanometer and violets have 400 nanometer. Violet color absorb in 400 nanometer wavelength. Okay, so now what is wavelength? Okay, so all these waves are flow like this. So like first wave are this, second is this, and third are this. So the length between two wave. Okay, so length between two wave, first wave, second wave. So length between two wave is known as wavelength. Okay, it's known as wavelength. Okay, now because radio wave have very large wavelength, just by that it can travel lots of distance. Okay, and because red color also have very large wavelength, so it can travel very large distance, and used in emergency case or in a flight or aeroplane lights. Okay, or everywhere we use red color. Okay, because its wavelength are very high and very long, and that's why it can travel very mm, large distance. Okay, now a new term comes: ophthalmology. Ophthalmology. So what is ophthalmology? So scientific field है ये, scientific field that deal with the eyes and their disorders. Okay, so ophthalmologist कौन होगा? जो कि आई और उसके डिसऑर्डर को डील करता है, वो डॉक्टर. ओके, तो ophthalmology आपको पता होना चाहिए, या फिर आपको क्वेश्चन में पूछ लिया जा सकता है ना, है ना. So like what is uh, what is the area scientific fields which deal with the eye and their disorder, what we call that? So ophthalmology होगा वो, है ना. तो now if we talk about color perception. Okay, color perception की बात अगर अपन करें, so if we now if we all know about uh, that visual light falls within the wavelength range of approximately 400 to 700 nanometer wavelength. Okay, and like violet light has wavelength around 400 and red light has a wavelength around 700. Okay, now we are aware about this. Hope. And now so the color of an object depends on the wavelength of visual lights it's reflect. Okay, and so what type of wavelength, what number of the wavelength comes in contact with our eyes, and so that gives us a signal of that particular color. Okay, if 400 nanometers wavelengths light comes in contact with our eyes, and so that gives us signal of violet color. Okay, but we talk about the different scenario. For example, imagine this is an apple. Okay, so and here we are. Okay, here we are. Okay, so for example, in this apple absorb certain lights. Okay, for example 400 nanometer. Okay, and reflect other. Okay, reflect other wavelengths light. Okay, for example, reflects these lights as a 500 nanometer wavelength light. Okay, so what we visualize, we receive its color based on this reflected light. Okay, not this receptive lights. Okay, we visualize this reflected light that reflected by its object. Okay, so what color we receive? Color that have 500 nanometer. For example, green color have 500 nanometer wavelength. Okay, so then we not visualize it as a violet color, we all visualize its apple as a green color that's like reflect 500 nanometer wavelength. Okay, so and like if you talk about an object appear white color when it's reflect all wavelength of visual light. Okay, visual light. Okay, and an object appear black when it's reflect or we can say absorb. Okay, we need absorb all वेवलेंथ ऑफ विजुअल लाइट्स। सो कोई भी ऑब्जेक्ट वाइट कलर का तब दिखता है जब वो जितनी भी विजुअल लाइट उसके ऊपर आ रही है वो सारी की सारी रिफ्लेक्ट कर देता है। सारी की सारी वेवलेंथ की विजुअल लाइट अगर वो रिफ्लेक्ट करता है, विबज्योर वाली सारी की सारी वेवलेंथ वाली अगर वो विजुअल लाइट को रिफ्लेक्ट करता है अपने से, तो वो सारी वो फिर वाइट कलर दिखता है वो। देन अगर कोई ऑब्जेक्ट सारी की सारी वेवलेंथ को ऑब्जॉर्व कर रहा है और रिफ्लेक्ट कुछ भी नहीं कर रहा है तो वो ब्लैक अपीयर होता है। Okay, that's why in presence of sunlight, if we wear black color uh, clothes, so it's absorb all the sunlights having visual lights wavelength, so it's absorb all the visual lights wavelength. That's why it's become hot. Okay, it's become warm and we feel warm or high temperature inside us. Okay, so if we talk about cone type, okay, cone types. So there are sorry, cone type. So there are three different type of cones: L cones, M cones, and S cones. Okay, cones, like different cones are sensitive to different wavelengths. Okay, cone cells are there in our eyes. Okay, and like if we talk about the uh, peak absorption of their wavelength, the L cone absorb approximately like so Alcon is approximately 558 nanometer. So this we all know appear as like we can say Alcon absorb red color. Okay, red and longer wavelength. Okay, long uh, wavelength. Okay, and so Amcon absorb approximately about 525 nanometer, and these all data are collected in vitro. And if you talk about the in vivo, 525 nanometer is shifted towards the 530 nanometer in vivo. Okay, and Amcon absorb 525 approximately in vitro, and that's like we can say absorb green and medium green color or medium light of wavelength. Okay, and ascon that approximately absorb 420 nanometer wavelength light that shifted to the 440 nanometer in vivo and appear, or we can say absorb a blue color light with blue color light, and we can say short wavelength. Okay, okay, so so color blindness is the result of lacking of the one cone type. Okay, if like for example L cone cells are defective in someone's eyes, that person are unable to visualize red color, or okay, or struggle in visualize red color. Okay, or we can say a larger wavelength of visual light. Or if some person having defection in ascon cells in their eyes, it will struggle to visualize blue color or unable to visualize blue color. Okay, if someone person having amcon defection, and that person will unable to visualize a green color or unable to receive a green color medium wavelength light. Okay, so we can draw a graph also. In x-axis we can show a wavelength in nanometer. So for example we can start with the 380 nanometer, 450 nanometer, 500 nanometer, and 550 nanometer, 600 nanometer, and 650, then 700 nanometer. And y-axis shows light absorbed by cone cells. Okay, light absorbed by cone cell. Okay, now we all know that cone absorbs approximately 558 8 nanometer, like red color absorb 558 nanometer, that falls within like 558. So here red color absorb. Okay, and and okay, then amcon, or we can say green color, absorbs in a wavelength of 525 nanometer. 525 nanometer means it's absorbed like almost here. Okay, and ascon means blue color, absorb in very short wavelength, 420 nanometer, like here 420 nanometer. Yeah, we talk about the structure of the eye, or accessory structure of the eyes. Okay, so now this is the outer surface of the eyes. You can see and iris part of the eyes that provide the color to the eyes. Okay, and this is the upper lids, like then this is an outer white colored layer called as sclera. Okay, known as the sclera part, and then cornea. Okay, cornea is the transparent front part of the sclera. Okay, transparent, this part of sclera is transparent. Okay, so the transparent part of sclera known as cornea. Okay, and and whenever light enters the eye through the cornea. Okay, light enter the eyes through the cornea part. Okay, and it's play a crucial roles in focusing incoming light. Okay, and provides a maximum dioptic power for clear vision. Okay, then iris again uh, provide colors to the eyes. Okay, uh, many people's have eyes having blue color, having black color and brown color, so that colors depends upon this part. Okay, iris, which type of pigment cells its content. Okay, so it's located behind the cornea and determine eye color. Okay, and also regulate the amount of light entering and the eye by adjusting size of the pupil. Okay, and it can be contracted or it can be dilated. Okay, depends upon the intensity of light. Okay, and so if we are in dim light condition or in darkness, so people will be dilated. Okay, and as radial muscles of iris contract. Okay, so वहाँ की जो रेडियल मसल्स होती है, यहाँ पे मसल सेल्स होती है आइरिस, ये आइरिस वाला पार्ट है, यहाँ पे रेडियल मसल्स होती है जो कॉन्ट्रैक्शन कर सकती है, एंड कॉन्ट्रैक्शन से वो डायलेट हो जाएगी. ओके, एंड इधर की तरफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेगी तो वो डायलेट हो जाएगी, ये वाला जो डायमीटर है वो डायलेट होके बढ़ जाएगा, है ना. तो वहाँ पे बिकॉज डार्कनेस है, ऑलरेडी लाइट कम है, तो डायमीटर ज़्यादा होगा तो उतना ही ज़्यादा लाइट है वो आ पाएगा अंदर की तरफ. ओके, क्योंकि हमें लाइट चाहिए यहाँ पे डिम लाइट कंडीशन में. और अगर सडनली अपन ब्राइट लाइट की कंडीशन में आ जाएंगे, सो वहाँ पे प्यूपिल है वो डायलेट हो जाएगा. प्यूपिल वो डायलेट हो जाएगा, उसकी जो वहाँ पे रेडियल मसल्स है वो यहाँ पे डायलेट हो जाएगी, और डायलेट होते ही उसका डायमीटर हो जाएगा कम, क्योंकि ऑलरेडी वी हैव हाई इंटेंसिटी लाइट. ओके, सो वी डोंट नीड मच लाइट्स इनसाइड आवर आई. सो यहाँ पे डायमीटर कम होने के कारण जो इनफ अमाउंट होती है वही यहाँ पे वो आइस के अंदर है वो आ पाएगी. तो यहाँ पे इसका साइज है वो भी मेंटेन किया जाता है, पीपल का साइज है वो मेंटेन होता है अकॉर्डिंग टू लाइट इंटेंसिटी. ओके, एंड then lens. Okay, this part of eyes is known as lens. Okay, lens. So behind the pupil there is a transparent structure called lens. Okay, and the lens change its shape, thicker or thinner. Okay, so it's also can be change its size. It can be a thicker or thinner to focus light onto the retina. Okay, so this part can be focus the light onto the retina accordingly. Okay, and it helps adjust focus for distance and nearby object. Okay, then retina. Okay, then retina, this part of eyes known as retina. Okay, retina. So retina is light sensitive layer, okay, at the back of the eyes, and contain too much nerve cells, or we can say rod and cone cells are a kind of nerve cells. Okay, so contain rods and cone cell. Okay, there are three type of cone cell, as we all aware. uh, Cone cells. Okay, and that cover image forming. Okay, convert image formed by the lens onto the electric impulse. Okay, and so that impulse that formed by the lens into the electrical impulse, that impulse are then transmitted to the brain via the optical nerves. Okay, so here we easily seen there's two optical nerves that goes from the uh, like light sensitive cells or the layer retina to the brain. Okay, where this electrical impulse having image information are processed into the brain cerebral cortex area. Okay, so there are three type of like nerve cell in the retina. One is cone cells that sensitive to the bright light and provide responsible for the color vision, and rod cell that sensitive to dim light and play a crucial role in peripheral vision. Okay, and the third type of cell is ganglion cells. Okay, and that have melanopsin. Okay, and at the junction of at the junction of optic nerve and retina, there is no sensory nerve cells. Okay, and resulting in a blind spot. Okay, so here the junction of optic nerve and retina, there are no sensory nerve cell, as we can see. Okay, and that results in a blind spot. Okay, in our eyes. And if you talk about eye muscles, so the eye also has six muscles that can control the movement. And so okay, so there are three muscles that can control its movement. Okay, and muscles including the median rectus. First is medial rectus, and second is lateral rectus, and third is superior rectus, and fourth is inferior rectus, and sorry, inferior oblique and superior oblique. Okay, so they provide different tension and torsion uh, to move the eye effectively. Okay, and so now if we talk about lacrimal apparatus, so uh, this is the lacrimal apparatus. Okay, lacrimal apparatus, lacrimal glands that secrete tears. Okay, आंसू जहाँ से निकलते हैं वो यहाँ पे so this is lacrimal gland. okay, sides in shape like almond, okay, and that secret a fluid like a tear, okay, and the fluid drains into 6 to 12 excretory lacrimal duct, okay, so like first, second, third, and fourth, so these ducts carry throughout the fluid, okay, so ये जो glands है, इन ग्लैंड्स में टीयर्स बनते हैं और वो टीयर्स है वो इस ऐसी डक्ट के थ्रू, एक डक्ट है, इस डक्ट के थ्रू है वो यहाँ पे कैरी आउट किए जाते हैं। यहाँ पे ये है, इसके अंदर फ्लूइड बना और वो एक डक्ट के थ्रू है वो बाहर निकलता है। तो ऐसी डक्ट वहाँ पे 6 से 12 एक्सक्रीटरी लैक्रिमल डक्ट्स देखने को मिलती है, ओके, एंड दिस डक्ट्स एम्पटी टीयर्स onto the surface of the conjunctiva of the upper lids, okay, so upper part of the eye is known as conjunctiva over the sclera part, okay, this part, and near the upper lids here tears are released by the lacrimal excretory duct, okay, so after releasing the fluid like tears here, then some part of these fluids and mostly part of this fluid or tears are reabsorbed or retake by this spore, a pore known as puncta, lacrimal puncta, okay, so the spore known as lacrimal puncta, स्पोर के थ्रू ये टीयर्स वापस इस डक्ट के अंदर जाते हैं, ओके, वापस इस डक्ट के अंदर जाते हैं। इस डक्ट को हम बोलते हैं कैनालिकुली, ओके, ऊपर वाली को हम बोलते हैं सुपीरियर कैनालिकुली, नीचे वाली डक्ट को अपन बोलते हैं इन्फीरियर लेक्रिमल कैनालिकुली, ओके, सो ये यहाँ पे लेक्रिमल ग्लैंड्स है, यहाँ पे फ्लूइड ये टीयर्स पहले ही रिलीज कर देते हैं अपर जो आईलिड्स है उसके स्क्लेरा, उसके नियर जो स्क्लेरा वाला पार्ट वहाँ पे ये है, लेकिन जो आंसू है वो टीयर्स है वो वापस से अपटेक कर लिया जाता है इन डक्ट के थ्रू। ये जो कैनाल्स है इन कैनाल्स को हम बोल रहे हैं लाइक कैनालिकुलिस, ओके, इंफीरियर एंड सुपीरियर कैनालिकुली। इन कैनालिकुली से ये एक जो सेक है लाइक लेक्रिमल सेक है, एक्सक्रीटरी लेक्रिमल सेक है, इस सेक के अंदर है वो ये आंसू आ जाते हैं, लाइक जो फ्लूइड है वो इसमें आ जाते हैं। देन जो ये एक्सक्रीटरी नेजोलेक्रिमल डक्ट है, नेजोलेक्रिमल डक्ट इसलिए बोलते हैं ये क्योंकि ये जो अपना जो नोज़ है उस नोज़ में है वो एक्सक्रीट करते हैं। ये जो एक्सक्रीटरी पोर आप देख पा रहे हो, इस एक्सक्रीटरी पोर के थ्रू ये जो आंसू है वो आंखों से इस पंक्टिटा वाले पोर से होकर इस कैनालिकुली से होकर इस सेक में आएगा, लेक्रिमल सेक में। देन लेक्रिमल सेक से लेक्रिमल एक्सक्रीटरी ये जो डक्ट है इस डक्ट से होकर इस पोर से होकर ये वो जो आंसू वाला जो वो जो फ्लूइड है वो नोज़ में आ जाता है, ओके, नोज़ में आता है। तभी तो है वो जब लाइक क्राइंग और इमोशनल वाली जो सिचुएशन होती है वहाँ पे आंखों में आंसू आने के साथ साथ में यहाँ पे लाइक ये जो फ्लूइड है वो नोज़ में भी आ जाता है ना। So here is an important disease related to this called as lecriocystitis, okay, तो sorry decryocysstitis, okay, cystitis। तो यहाँ पे ये डिजीज है जो कि लेक्रिमल सेक जो है, यहाँ पे इन्फेक्शन, बैक्टीरियल इन्फेक्शन, ये जो लेक्रिमल सेक है यहाँ पे बैक्टीरियल इन्फेक्शन होने के कारण, यहाँ पे बैक्टीरियल इन्फेक्शन होने के कारण यहाँ पे ये जो लेक्ट्रिमल डक्ट है, ये जो नेजोलेक्रिमल डक्ट है जिसके थ्रू ये जो टीयर्स है, ये जो फ्लूइड है वो नोज़ के अंदर है वो इंटर करता है। सो ये नेजोलेक्रिमल डक्ट है वो ब्लॉक हो जाती है, ओके, सॉरी, so this infection of so an infection of lacrimal sacs, okay, and usually caused by bacteria and bacterial infection and result in blockage of the nasolacrimal duct, okay, so yeah, so lacrimal fluid composition की अगर हम बात करें, if we talk about the composition of lacrimal fluid, so it composed like watery it have a watery solution, okay, contain like salts, okay, some like mucus and lysozyme enzyme, okay, and that protective bacterial enzyme, okay, and like protective bacterial enzyme, okay. And if you talk about the function of lacrimal fluid, that protects from the bacteria because it's contain lysozyme that can lysis of bacteria, and cleanness of eyes and lubricates eyes, and moisturize provide moisturize to the eyes and eyeball. Okay, and like spread over the surface of the eyeball by blinking of the eyelid. Okay, because it's secreted on the outer lid sides. Okay, then when the outer lids come to the downside of the eyes, it's spread all over the eyeball. Okay, so that's why. And production, each glands produce about 1 ml of like lacrimal fluid per day. Okay, so like each gland produce 1 ml, about 1 ml, almost 1 ml lacrimal fluid per day. Okay, so in our next video we're gonna discuss about little bit advanced in little bit advanced portion. We'll talk about a detail about rods cell structure, cone cell structure, and mechanism of like vision. ओके, सो इतना ही था इस वाली वीडियो में. वीडियो अच्छी लगी तो वीडियो को लाइक आप कर सकते हो, सब्सक्राइब. ओके, बाय बाय.